Good afternoon and welcome to beautiful Pickett, Wisconsin. On a late September day is September 24th. Fall is officially here and it's still beautiful. I think the temperature on the weather widget says it's 63 degrees, might be 65 now. The winds were blowing a little bit, but it feels really comfortable. The humidity is just beautiful. It's just a spectacular day here. And I'm happy to say that this will be yet another run of this Saito FA-150 engine of mine. Today, I've got a smaller, much smaller prop on it. This is a 16.6 prop. I've got the same Saito SS glow plug that came with it. And this fuel today it's probably mostly FAI, but it might have a little bit of nitro left in it, so it might be like 1% nitro. So I'm just going to consider this an FAI run of this engine. Once again, I am going to attempt to hand start it, but I think the reason it doesn't hand start very well is some of these later, I don't even know that this is a later engine, it's just that Saito, it still has this velocity stack on here, and that velocity stack has a slot where a choke lever or a choke slide is supposed to go, but for whatever reason, Saito stopped putting those choke slides in there. And I know that it's just not missing because I've seen so many of these things, and sometimes they have them and sometimes they don't, and I think it's just a time period thing where they started saying, getting cheap on things and saying, well, we're going to just not put that on there. Most people just, start with an electric starter. They don't need to prime it. I am going to attempt to prime it, but covering the hole here and priming it just really doesn't work because it can still suck a little bit of air and it just doesn't get a really good prime. But I'm going to attempt it anyway, and if I can get a lot of fuel coming out of here, then there's a good chance that this engine will hand start. I'm not going to try and do it too much, but we're going to give it a shot. So those are the parameters for this run. Let's just do it. Okay, take 6 or 7. Okay, so this is just beautiful. So what happened in the beginning, and I'm not sure how much of it I'm going to include, it took a lot to get this started, and the reason it took a lot to get it started was because for some reason, even though my starter battery is charged, the other day it turned this thing over fine. Today it's not wanting to, but like I was saying, I was talking about the carb, not having that slider choke, and not really being able to get a good prime on it. The whole reason I couldn't get this thing to fire at all, and it detonated a couple times and loosened the props, was because it wasn't priming, or at one time maybe I over-primed it and that's what resulted in those 2 detonations. But there's a sweet spot in getting it primed. And the last time, just before I actually got the thing running with the 1 flip, was I pulled the plug out just to make sure my knife starter wasn't dead, shook the plug, make sure it wasn't flooded, which it wasn't. But before I put the plug in, I shot fuel into the chamber. Just a little bit, just enough to go, and I just, boop, a little bit of fuel right up in the chamber, because even though I'm sitting here priming it and turning it over like that, it doesn't guarantee that it's getting, that fuel is actually getting up into the chamber. Not like when you have a really good vacuum. Then you are getting it up there. But so as soon as I shot a little fuel up there, boom, the thing fired right up. So it's not an issue with it not wanting to start or being a hard starting engine. It's all a matter of getting the right prime. But this engine is just sweet. I really like this 16.6 prop on here because it allows it to really turn up, and I wasn't leaning it out at all, really. I did a little bit, but it was hitting over 9,000 RPM with this prop, and I don't believe, see, there's only one review of this engine that I found, and it's for the 150S. Now the 150S came out in 1994. I am not sure exactly when they just dropped the S designation and just made these 150s. As far as I know, the only differences between the 150S, the original 150S, which was a black engine with silver rocker covers, the only difference that I believe that there is, I don't believe they did any detuning because this is still the A case. I don't think they did any detuning. I think they dropped the S simply because they didn't paint the case black. I believe that's the only reason. I think the only thing that made the 150S an S was because it was a black case. I believe. And it probably had a slider choke too. But then of course they changed the exhaust and it still stayed the 150, and in the 2000s at some point I believe they made the 150s in the B-style case. I know they did with the 180s. The B-style case, I don't know what other things they may have changed. Obviously they changed the housing and the timing cover. I don't think they did any timing difference changes, but who knows. This is a pretty aggressive engine, and over time maybe they did detune it because people were scared of it or something. I don't know, but it's a beautiful running engine. This thing is super awesome to run, and I'm not sure I'm going to keep it. I may actually be putting this up for sale, so if you liked what you saw and you're interested in potentially owning this engine, shoot me an email. Anyway, that's the run for today.